And we're back. I'm Bill Hellkamp of Reach Development Systems, and with me is Professor Scott Plum of the Minnesota Sales Institute.
Information is essential for open and relevant conversations. Asking each other questions is a mutual activity. What type of questions progress the sales process? Which ones stall it out? And which ones kill it altogether? You may need a wooden spoon between your teeth as Bill and I discuss how to deliver difficult news and much more on episode 431 of Get in the Door podcast.
All right, Scott. Well, I'm not sure why they need a wooden spoon between their teeth, but let's go on to topic one, which is our book club, Chapter 4 of Beyond Selling Value by Mark Shonka and Dan Kosh. Chapter 4 is part of the research chapter, The Power of Research, Keys to the Customer Kingdom. And I just want to remind everyone that Mark and Dan were kind enough to give us a number of their book, Beyond Selling Value. And we're giving that away. And listen, at the end of the book club section, we'll tell you how you can get in the drawing and who our most recent winner is. But man, Scott, this chapter 4 is a honker. It is full of stuff.
It's got a lot of stuff in it. It could be 2 or 3 chapters. There's a lot of content. It's all important, and it mostly around information, gathering information. I think that's really important because the information that we want to know will determine the questions that we ask.
Yeah, and like in your opening comments, right, it's all about asking questions in a conversational way that makes it feel like a mutual conversation, not an interrogation.
Right. I think one thing that I'd like to remind our listeners from the last book we did on the Challenger sale, I think one thing that really stood out for me, and I heard from some of the feedback from our listeners, is that we're supposed to lead to a solution, not lead with a solution.
Right.
And that's really important. And that's part of a two-way conversation and have a mutual engagement on both sides sharing information.
And we're trying to get a lot of information here. And this is what struck me about this chapter. I thought if I got all of this information on any particular client, I could fill a book. I mean, the just telling about the information here was 20 pages. So if I tried to get all this from every customer, is that really possible? Or does each customer have maybe some special pieces that are more important? And think about that perhaps as we go through these 5 research elements that they talk about. We won't go into 100% of detail on all these, but if you want a resource for developing your customer questions from, this is a great chapter to just be a resource to pull questions from whenever you're going to have a customer conversation.
This kind of reminded me of the McKay 66. Some of our listeners know what that is. Some of them are like, who? Huh? Harvey McKay wrote a book in the late 80s, Swim with the Sharks Without Being Eaten Alive. And he came up with the McKay 66, which are 66 questions that you should ask every prospect.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some overlap between that book, those questions, and these questions. But Bill, I got to ask you, how much information, how much knowledge should a sales person be bringing to the client versus asking questions? It's a difference between bringing knowledge of the problems that are going on with similar clients. So we concentrate on certain industries, so we know what some of the trends are. We know what's going on in the process of deciding how to pick our solutions, so we know what's relevant. And how much do we need to ask, and how much should we bring? Where's the balancing act?
Yeah, I think we need to always know that we're going to be bringing it eventually. And that is in many ways, it's the presentation where we're going to put it all together, their needs, what we know about the industry, what we know about our product, and how it can fill those needs for them and help them be number one in their industry. So I think the presentation they're going to talk about later is important. What I found, though, is that when I go into, maybe this is my first or second meeting with a client, and I'm asking a lot of these questions of them, they want something in return. They don't want to just having me ask question after question after question after question and be filling out, as you say, maybe the McKay 66, but they want to know, what can I do for them at some point, even in the first meeting. So while I don't have 100% of the answers for them, I should be gleaning some sort of a direction for them, even as we're starting with a few of these questions. So we're starting in our mind to put some kind of package together.
Right. And sometimes we need to lead the witness. And that's legal when you're selling. It's not legal when you're in the courtroom, but we need to introduce information that they have not considered. And sometimes asking questions is the best way to introduce that information at the same time.
Yeah, they talked a lot in this one about a lot of these questions, I think, happen with the coach or with your champion in in an industry and in an organization. And when you're talking with your champion, they already know about your product. They're already on your side.
Right.
So you're not really selling them as much as saying, look at Larry, let's get all this information out on the table so that I know where we need to go with other people in the organization, not just you. And so if I know, for example, section 1 is the corporate profile and the direction. What are the issues, financial conditions, culture, those sorts of things. So what's going on in the organization from a corporate standpoint, and where are they trying to take the corporation? That's very important information to know.
It is. Yeah, definitely. I call it the cast of characters. You need to know, the cast of characters.
Well, that's the second one, actually.
Yeah.
And that's the organizational structure. And you're absolutely right. They talk about the cast of characters, a formal chart, an informal chart, a social chart. What are the buying roles? And so it's very important to not just know where they sit, but where they sit from a political standpoint.
Mm-hmm. I don't know when they brought up the chart. I saw a great chart in the book on influence and title. How much influence does somebody have, and what is their title? And sometimes there's a difference between the two. It's just a great visual that I had never thought of before.
Well, my son's a vice president at a pretty major bank, but
he doesn't have any influence. Everybody's a vice president.
My dog, I think, could be a vice president at a bank.
Right.
Careful. No offense to bank people.
Careful.
Some of my best friends are vice presidents of banks. As a matter of fact,
and we love them the most.
I can think of 3 of my best friends that are vice presidents at bank, and my son. So, no, okay. And I think what you're saying though is that don't just play by title. Because they have a title doesn't always mean that they have influence in the organization.
Right.
And somebody without a title can have a great deal of influence. They just weren't interested in a title.
But they don't even have a title. They're from outside the organization.
So our third area is the profiles of key players. And so this is where we start. Okay, we look at the organization as a whole, then we look at the flow chart or the org chart, and now we're driving deep into each particular person and trying to understand what's their background. This is where we might get onto their Facebook site or their LinkedIn site first to find out a little bit about them, where they went to school, where might we have some connections with them.
Right.
So, and then we can talk about their character, their style, what are their priorities, those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Do you get into that a lot with the key players? Do you do a lot in the personal background, or do you feel that feels invasive when you go to somebody and say, I'm looking at your LinkedIn page and I see you went to school at Mizzou?
Well, I do look at their LinkedIn page. I always looked at the LinkedIn page because I always want to find out a little bit about them, whether or not I disclose that I know that information, or if I Google their name, or I look at some of these dark websites that give insider information. I don't always disclose what I know. If I know something, I might want to work on steering clear of it.
Record or something like that.
Well, there's certain websites out there you can find information about people. But I don't always disclose what I know. I rather lead on some of the strengths and some of the things that I want to be associated with when they think of me in the conversations that we have. In this book, this chapter on questions, it's rich. It's rich with questions, and it's worth purchasing the book alone just to have the list of all the questions that are there.
Right.
There's one thing that I did notice with the questions, though, is none of them started with why. Because
that's not the research part of this, so is it? Right. Some of it was.
Right. I know. But how many sales books have you read, Bill, that always ask about the whys? They always ask about the whys. Begin with why could be a title of a book. I can't remember if it is or not.
Simon Sinek might have already written that.
I don't know.
Did well with that one too.
Yeah. So everybody thinks, wow, start with why. Start with why. Caution. Why triggers emotions. Why is a triggering question. People get defensive because they're trying to justify their current position, and they may have made the decision that didn't turn out real well. And you start asking why, and they're going to have to start disclosing that. They're going to get defensive. They're going to shut down. They're going to not want to talk to you, and they're not going to want to share information with you. And boom, guilt, game over, tilt on the pinball machine.
Yeah. We can get ahead of ourselves a little bit. I think you have to have a personal relationship in some cases to really drive that why question. That's always been, in my mind, a way to overcome the objection, right?
Right.
Well,
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't have the money for this. Well, let's get into why this is really important to you and what it
Right.
means to
Yeah.
you beyond just spending a couple $100,000 on this.
Right.
What's it going to do for you in the long term? And that's gets into the very personal why, which you don't get that in the first meeting with somebody.
Sure. Good point.
So section 4 is the departmental profile. The authors talk about the corporate profile and the direction. And then in section 4, they talk about the departmental profile and how that fits in and merges in with the corporate direction. What is the department's objectives and strategies and issues and concerns? And then they get into the product fit and account qualification in that area too. So it's really talking about, now we're driving this down into the personal level, into the departmental level, and how we can find out what we need to know about why this might be important to them, so we can, in some ways, learn the why without talking about the why.
Yeah, good point.
One of the things that they used as an example was knowing what the president is thinking about and what is interesting to that company president or a corporate officer, and sometimes reading the letter that they put on their corporate report. Talks about what's our direction and where we're going and what's important to us. And sometimes it's how they started the businesses can be important to them.
Right.
So all those things can fit into the why, even though they're not why questions.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last piece is the business fit. And I didn't make a lot of notes on that, but I think that's all around why are we the right answer for them?
Right. Does it
And
make
asking
sense to
questions
continue
around
the
that.
conversation? Do you want to meet again? You
Right.
have to always have a reason to call back or to schedule, or if you start going for the no, things might start to pick up too.
Right.
There might be more interest there.
I always learn the purpose of a meeting is to have another meeting.
Right.
From a sales standpoint. I mean, we're trying to get them to recognize us as an important part of their organization and want us to come back, and we're offering them things. We're not just asking questions. We're offering them things. We're bringing partial solutions. We're bringing ideas. I know that quite often when I'm developing a sales training program or any kind of a training program, I'll meet with maybe 10 or 15 people to find out what their needs are. And it takes a couple of meetings before they get honest with me.
Yeah.
All right. So any other things that you want to talk about on this Power of
No.
Research, the keys to the customer kingdom?
I kind of went through them all, Bill.
Okay,
You got
all
to
right.
get them over with. Thanks.
All right. Well, there's good stuff there. I mean, like you say, it is a resource. It's probably
Yeah.
not something, it wasn't a compelling read. All right. It was just a lot of information. It was factual.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to, take pieces out of this, improve my notes, and put this in my questioning file to say, when I'm going to prepare for a meeting, are there some things I'm missing? Because I could go through this, and sometimes I ask for the formal chart, sometimes I don't.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So I don't always
You'll
get the
know.
org chart because I forget.
Right.
And that's
You'll
the
know.
biggest problems with salespeople. We forget what we ought to be doing, and a chapter like this is a good reminder.
Yeah. Good.
So as I mentioned before, we're doing a drawing on the book Beyond Selling Value, which was kindly given to us by Dan Kosh. It's been signed by both Mark and Dan, the authors. So that's always nice to have a signed copy. I kind of like signed books. So that's a signed copy. And all you have to do is go to getinthedoorpodcast.com, getinthedoorpodcast.com, contact either Scott or myself, ask us a question, make a comment, or just tell us that you want to be in the drawing, and your name will be in the drawing.
Right.
And for this week, for this podcast, our book giveaway winner is Alex Kushner. So we're excited to have Alex get that book. We'll send that out to him. And then, so I'd encourage you to sign up at getinthedoorpodcast.com.
We got an easy form there. Just fill that out, and Bill and I will enter you in. This segment of Get in the Door podcast is brought to you by The Art of Prospecting, your guide of getting in the door, by Steve Kloida.
Steve Kloida was known internationally for increasing salespeople's ability to make solid appointments with qualified prospects. You too can learn this essential skill by ordering a copy of his superb book, The Art of Prospecting, your guide to getting in the door. In this book, Steve shares the top strategies and tactics he has developed, implemented, and personally tested with more than 1 million sales and prospecting calls. You can get his book on the website, theprospectingexpert.com. In addition, check out his other great online resources. Instant Sales Coaching, which will guide you through 5 online success modules. A guided prospecting process entitled Call Reluctance Transformer, and the Magnetic Selling Strategies Workbook, a detailed step-by-step guide to increasing your sales. Get any of these valuable resources at theprospectingexpert.com.
We're going to talk about how to deliver difficult news, Bill. And this is why I said you might have to get out a wooden spoon because...
Oh, this was the wooden spoon reference.
Yeah. So dealing with conflict, I think, is always difficult. I think people have a negative perception of conflict. I think conflict is normal and natural. I think conflict is the pursuit of truth. It's two people in the pursuit of truth. And I always tell my family, the greatest gift that I can ever give you is my opinion. Now, they don't think it's the greatest gift.
They don't agree with that.
No, they don't. But I tell you, to know what somebody
I heard
thinks,
opinions are like armpits, and everybody's got a couple of them, and they stink.
If I'm sharing my beliefs, and we're talking about beliefs, we're talking about the internal operating system. We're talking about who we are as human beings before we ever get to the human doings.
Okay, you're getting philosophical on
I
us here,
am,
Scott.
We're losing the audience. I know.
They need to be smacked in the head with a wooden spoon if we keep going down this road.
I know.
So let me ask you this question. Give me some idea of what types of difficult news you're talking about. What might a salesperson have to deliver?
I think if it gets into the fulfillment after a purchase agreement has been committed to, or after a purchase order has been submitted, and we're getting into now fulfilling things.
Okay, so we can't meet the promises that we thought we made earlier.
Well, we never said that. No, I'm not implying that.
Okay.
I'm just saying that we're setting the stage to do fulfillment. And sometimes fulfillment doesn't go without a hitch. Sometimes there's problems. So we might ask a question. When you've ever started a project like this, has it ever been smooth and perfect and there's never been a bump? And the prospect most likely will say no. And I don't assume that we're going to deliver everything perfectly as much as we plan it. And we may come into situations where we need to adapt. I just want to know that we're going to be as proactive as we can. I want to be able to ask you questions so that you can be prepared as possible. But as we start getting into the fulfillment of stuff, there may be stuff that come up that we need to be able to change and adapt accordingly. Are you okay with that?
Right,
yeah, I totally get that. So now we're bringing difficult news up before it ever has a chance of coming up and making us appear like we don't know what we're doing. We have to always appear like we're 2 or 3 steps ahead of the prospect. And sometimes when we need to set this stage where I'm going to be able to tell you things that we need, but if for some reason you don't give me the information that I need in order to proceed, it's going to delay the project. That could also be at the beginning too, after we get a conversation about working together too, before we get to a commitment.
Well, I think, I'll tell you the 3 major ones I run into. I guess I've never done it that way, in that I've kind of assumed there might be problems and pre-played it. I don't think that's a bad idea, but I haven't done that before. But I have run into 3 major types of bad news that I've had to teach clients how to deliver. Number 1 is we screwed up, or our sub vendor screwed up, and now we got to come in and talk about why you're not going to get what you thought you were going to get when you thought you were going to get it, which is kind of what you're pre-playing a little bit and saying these bumps in the roads can happen. But that's a difficult thing. And then this just happened to me. I just had this question from a client during a Zoom call the other day. And they said, well, it was okay the first time that our sub vendor screwed up, but we put all these things in place to make sure it wouldn't happen again. And they did it again anyway. Another one that I've had to deal with clients a lot is price increases.
Of course.
And that's a hard thing to swallow when I'm already doing a lot of business with you. And now I'm going to come, and they're not usually a 10% across the board price increase. It's some areas increase and some decrease, and, can be raw materials can be going up, whatever.
Right.
So that can be a challenging thing to deliver. And then the third one that I've had to personally deliver that I found very difficult is you have gone beyond what we agreed to in our contract. You're now out of the contract range, and it's going to cost you more to do what we've discussed because you've made so many changes to what we've been doing that now you're outside of the range, and I can't just keep working for free because you keep changing things later on.
Mm.
And so those change requests or those additional fees because the client has decided to do more than was normally paid for. So have you ever run into kind of those types of difficult
Yeah,
news?
I have when we've screwed up. Now, I think it's one thing to keep in mind that customers and prospects and clients don't want to hear "I'm sorry" or apologies. They don't want to hear that. They want to hear, what are you going to do to fix it?
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to concentrate on the solution? And I think that you need to be really grateful when somebody brings something up to you that did not meet their expectations. And I think you need to acknowledge that and express your appreciation by saying, thank you for sharing that with me. I know that may not have been easy to think about telling me, and I'm grateful you did. Will you give me another chance to fix it? And most likely you're going to hear yes. They want a solution. They don't want an apology. Now, when it's all over with, I think you need to confirm whether you met their expectations when it's all over with. And then you give them one last and final apology saying, thank you for bringing it up. I apologize for any inconvenience that may have caused for you. I'm grateful that you gave us a chance to be able to do it right.
Yeah. I think they're okay with an apology. I'm sorry that happened. I'm sorry we screwed up.
But how many salespeople say it 6 times?
Yeah, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about you need to smooth the waters a little bit. And if you screwed up, you have to admit you screwed up and let's move forward here. So I'm sorry that happened. Let's talk about what happened and how we're going to do it. I think the key is usually the problem multiplies if we try to hide it. So sure. I find that more normal than not, we as a company know when the screw up happens before the client does. Mm-hmm. And then we have to take it to them without delay and say, this is what's happening. This is what we're doing to fix it. I just wanted to make sure you knew so that you had it as quickly as possible. I think the clients need time to assimilate. I would also say do it in person or on the phone now or on a Zoom call. No texts, no emails. That's very impersonal. When you screwed up, you got to face the music. And what's the best way to communicate it? Think it through a little bit and then pick up the phone or schedule a Zoom meeting and talk to them.
Yeah. Good advice.
So what do you talk about as far as fixes and solutions? I mean, what if it's not really fixable, right? What if they missed a deadline and now that can't be gotten back again?
I think if we're 2 or 3 steps ahead of them, when we find there's something being delayed, I think we need to be able to present options to them while there's still chances to be able to make changes. If you get to a point where there are no options, then, we're out just as much as they're out. And we're the ones that are supposed to be telling them the process, being the advisor, the resource, and be able to concentrate on the solution that we're offering. Mm-hmm. So most cases, we've done it more than once. I mean, I think everybody needs to do it for the first time. And then once they do that for the first time, sell it, fulfill it, deliver, etc., they're able to know what happens and how it works.
And we should be good salespeople even in this process, right? So use the skills you have, present what's going on and immediately ask for feedback. Don't over talk it. Let them talk, right? Because then they get a chance to get that upsetness out of them. I call it kind of let the volcano go. Deal with their objections and their problems directly. Write them down. Make sure it looks like you're taking everything very seriously. But look for areas of agreement, right? How can we fix this? How can we do a make good? Yeah. What can we do to make this better for you? So I think that's important.
And I think you may be amazed at what low deliverables you need to give them in order to make them happy.
Yeah.
You may be surprised, but you need to be empathetic and sympathetic at the same time and work on what is it going to take to be able to achieve your satisfaction at this point.
Yeah. And usually they'll be very reasonable if you ask that question, right? So what is it you need to be satisfied with us? And I've almost always found the client to not ask for ridiculous things, to just say, look, usually they'll just go, okay, just don't let it happen again.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Let's make sure it moves forward. Let's go back. But some of these, for customers, it can be a big deal. I did some work with a food packaging firm and, you get a recall on food and it is a big deal.
Well, supplies and supply chain management now, with the COVID, with, the tariffs, with whatever is affecting everything is in play,
right.
As our politicians are saying, everything's on the table.
Right. Well, I think our politicians are mostly saying, stay closed up and let your business stuff.
Yeah, right.
So, Apparently, we're only worried about one side of the equation, not
Right.
both sides. No editorial comments here, folks.
Right.
But we're all trying to stay alive in another way. So, and yeah, I think the real key is have a course of action you're going to recommend, right? Don't go into that meeting without a solution already in mind that you can ask them if that will work for them. Don't go in and just say, okay, we screwed up. What should we do?
Right. Focus on the solution.
You've got to have that solution. So be prepared, go into that meeting, knowing what you're going to do, bring it up early.
Yep.
And I liked your idea of preempting objections, just talking a little bit about, hey, as we work together, things are going to get messed up. Make sure you come and be honest with me. If I do something wrong, if I say the wrong thing, let's not let it wreck our progress so far. Let's be open and honest with each other.
Yeah.
Well, I have some resources on this that maybe people will be interested in. It's an article called What Scares Salespeople. And I thought of that one. First of all, we're here about 4 days before Halloween. We're cutting this. What scares salespeople, and obviously delivering bad news is something that scares salespeople. So I think you might have fun with that article.
Right. Good.
This segment has been brought to you by the Jumpstart Sales Coaching Program, presented by the hosts of the Get in the Door podcast.
Business is heating up, and now is the time to get back on the selling track. While others wait for the market to improve, prospects and opportunities await you now. Perhaps you want to be more productive on your prospecting, or you'd like to increase your closing percentage. Maybe having meetings online is not as comfortable as being in person. Sales reps are telling us they need some honest accountability and skill development to rise above the competition. Whatever your reason, this is the perfect time to engage with an experienced sales coach. That is why the host of Get in the Door podcast, Professor Scott Plum and Bill Hellkamp, have developed the Jumpstart Sales Coaching Program. For only $495, you can receive personal coaching from the same sales professionals you enjoy on this podcast. It all starts with a discussion to give us your insights into your specific goals, challenges, needs, and motivation. After your 1-hour online session to jumpstart your coaching process, you will receive 5 more half-hour individual coaching sessions to enable you to make improvements over time and create new habits. Most salespeople make their money back with just one sale. Go to getinthedoorpodcast.com to contact Bill or Scott about the Jumpstart Sales Coaching Program. Do you believe you deserve better results? Now is the time to invest in yourself and invest in your future.
So our golden nugget for today is from Thomas Paine. The harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph.
Oof, wow.
You believe that?
I do believe that. And I really believe that we need to protect what's important. In a relationship, communication will involve conflict, like I said earlier, and conflict is the pursuit of two people and the pursuit of truth. And I love truth. And that's triumph, is two people coming to an agreement after they've both been able to share their beliefs and opinions. It's just
I'm working with a young lady now who's trying to start her own business, and she's in the phone calling phase. And she contacted me today and said that she got a piece of business and she felt really good about it. Right.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about, right? If it's hard, then when we have a successful occurrence, we feel better about ourselves because we did something good.
I think it brings people closer together too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So everything that Bill and I talked about today will be at the website, getinthedoorpodcast.com. So check that out for the show notes. Again, submit your name for the book drawing. You can fill out the form there and be one of the many.
Yeah, the only place you can do is just to go directly to getinthedoorpodcast.com. Next week, we will talk about Chapter 5 of Beyond Selling Value. It's the last Power of Research section called the Advice Squad. And our topic will be the hard work of selling. Maybe it's hard for some and not hard for others, but we'll talk about that. And hopefully you won't need a wooden spoon in your mouth.
You might need to bring it with anyway.
Go out and get better one skill at a time.
Joyful selling.